Welcome to the Tobie Jacket Sew Along. This is the first of 5 days where we are just going to be breaking down the assembly of this jacket. This pattern is pretty advanced, so I think a lot of people are going to benefit from following this sew along. I will try to go as much into detail as possible while still not making this hours and hours long. Let's go ahead and jump in. I do want to just note real quick that I am sewing up both views. So view A, I'm sewing up in this really nice medium weight brown corduroy, and view B, I am sewing up in this green twill. Because a lot of the steps could be sewn up in either view, I am going to be jumping back and forth between the two fabrics. So just be aware of that if all of a sudden it switches and you're a little bit confused. Now before starting, we do want to make sure that we've transferred all notches and dots from the pattern pieces to the fabric. I like to use just these washable markers. That's my preference, but you can use whatever marking tool that you prefer. And then the last thing in preparation we're going to do is add fusible interfacing. So we'll do it to half of the zipper shield and to both the back and the front facings that I'm showing you here. This is for all of the views. And then also for all of the views, we're going to take our fronts and we're going to add fusible to that little inside corner on the wrong side of the fabric. And then also along those center front zipper edges. So you'll do that for both sides of the front. And then a couple more things for view A, which is the welt pocket and ribbing view. So we're also going to put one of the welt interfacings behind each of the welt marking just to kind of like stabilize that area. So you can just kind of center it. It doesn't have to be exact. And then once you've done that, you're also going to just apply the fusible interfacing to the wrong side of each of those welt pocket pieces. So if you're sewing view A with the welt pocket, that is all of the fusible interfacing that you need. And let's move on to the additional things for view B. So for view B, you're going to do the front and back neck facings like you did for view A, also those additional zipper front edge and that little corner for the fronts, as well as half of the zipper shield. Now also for view B, you are going to apply fusible to the wrong side of one of your collar pieces, as well as to the wrong sides of your main pocket flap pieces. And then lastly, you're also going to apply fusible to half of the zipper cover. Okay, so now that all the fusible is applied, we are going to start sewing, and we're going to start with stay stitching these curved neck edges. So this is going to be the main fronts and back and the front and back facing pieces. And to do this, you're going to reduce your stitch length to about 1.5 millimeters instead of the standard 2.5, just so it's a slightly tighter stitch. And you're going to sew at a scant 1/2 inch seam allowance, so just below a 1/2 inch, so it really stabilizes that stitch line, but also you don't have to unpick it later. It won't be showing after you sew your final garment. And just a reminder that I'm just showing this on view A, but you would also do this on view B in the same way. And this is what it should look like when you're done with all of your stay stitching. Now, one more item of stay stitching that we need to do is that little front corner. So at a normal 1/2 inch seam allowance, you are going to stitch still at 1.5 millimeters stitch length, just essentially along the interfacing, pivoting at that dot right there at the corner. Once again, be very precise with this. When you are turning that corner, leave your needle down like I'm showing here and continue stitching in the other direction. And then you're going to take some very sharp scissors and you're going to clip right into that dot. Make sure that you do not snip the stitching that you just made, but get as close as you can without snipping the stitching. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the welt pocket for view A. If you are sewing view B, you're actually done for today. I know that welt pockets can be really intimidating. If you've never sewn one before, you might want to practice first on some scrap fabric because we are going to be cutting right through our main front fabric. Let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and grab your welt pieces and you're going to fold them with right sides together long ways, and then you are going to pin the short little ends there, and you're going to go over and just stitch at a normal 1/2 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and trim down the seam allowances just to reduce some bulk, especially at those corners. And then you're going to turn each of these welt pieces right side out. Use a point turner or some other tool to make sure you get a really good corner at each of those edges, and give it a nice press. For the remainder of the welt pocket application, we're going to reduce our stitch length down to 1.5 millimeters for a really nice tight stitch. And then if you haven't done this already, go ahead and connect the 2 dots of your welt marking along your front on the right side. With the right side of the front facing up, you're going to line the edges of the welt pocket with the bottom edge of the welt marking. So you need to note that the welt is longer than the welt marking, so you're going to center it on that line. And then next you're going to lay the pocket lining on top of the welt so the raw edges line up right there along that top edge. And the right side of the pocket lining is facing the welt, and the pocket lining is centered on the welt. So there's going to be about a 1/2 inch extended past each side of the welt ends. You're going to go ahead and pin that in place, and then we're going to go over to our sewing machine, and we are going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance from one edge of the welt to the other. Now I find it helpful to go ahead and mark these points on the pocket lining before sewing. I'm doing this here with my little marker here, and then very carefully go over and do that stitching line from one end of the welt to the other through all layers, back stitching at both ends. Once again, it is very important that you are very precise with this stitching. Hit it exactly right. This will make the remainder of the welt application much easier. Okay, and this is what it should look like when it is done. As you can see, I stitched just along that welt, so there's a little flopping on the top and the bottom edges. Okay, so now you're going to take your main pocket, and with right sides touching, you're going to line the raw edge of the main pocket along the top edge of the welt marking. The top and the bottom edges of this pocket lining and main pocket should line up. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and pin that. We're going to mark the same location at the top and the bottom so that the stitching is in line, and once again we'll do it a 1/4 inch in from that raw edge. Once again, be extra precise when you are stitching. I like to mark it ahead of time just to make it easier to do, and back stitch at both ends. Okay, now for the slightly scary part, we're going to go ahead and cut open our welt. So I like to do this with the right side facing up, and you are going to cut along the welt marking. So this is shorter than the stitching that you did. I find the easiest way to do this is just to take a rotary cutter and cut right in the middle of those pocket pieces. And remember, you're not cutting all the way to the ends, you're leaving a little bit at the top and the bottom. You can adjust the length a little bit once you flip it over here, but I actually got pretty close. So once you have cut just along that line, you're going to take your really sharp snips again, and you are going to cut from the ends of each welt marking into the ends of the stitching that you just made. Now you want to make sure that you are only cutting through the front, so you're not cutting through any of those seam allowances or any pocket pieces when you're doing this. You want to cut very close into that stitch line. Get as close as you can without clipping your stitching, and you'll have these little triangle flaps when you're done if you do it correctly. If you don't get close enough to the stitching, you are going to have puckers on the right side. So you can always kind of flip it over and just check if you have any puckers, and if so, you might need to clip just a little bit closer into those corners. So you're going to pull the pocket lining, the main pocket, and those seam allowances through the cut that you just made to the back, and then that welt is going to stay on the front. Now with the wrong side facing up, you are going to go ahead and press all of those seam lines. You're also going to press those little triangles up and away from the opening. give everything a nice little press and steam. And then on the right side of your front, that welt piece is going to be pressed up. So just keep everything kind of in place and make sure that it is all pointed the correct direction. And then you're going to take that main pocket and you're going to pull it down so that the right sides of the main pocket and the pocket lining are touching each other, and all those raw edges and notches are lined up. So you're going to pull the pocket pieces away from the front and you're going to go ahead and pin them together all the way around those pocket edges. Okay, and next to go ahead and stitch that pocket. So pulling the pocket away from the front completely, we are going to stitch all the way around the pocket, being very careful to get those little triangle ends. Now it should be a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the pocket. If it's a little bit off, it's more important that you are sewing right up against the edge of that triangle than it is that it's an exact 1/2 inch seam allowance. It might be a teeny bit off just from cutting a little bit differently or sewing a little bit off, not to be worried. But getting right up against that edge means that your pocket will be stitched very securely. So go ahead, back stitching at both ends, stitch all the way around those the pocket and getting those triangle little pieces flat. Here is a closer look of what it should look like when you are done. Okay, so let's go ahead and lay everything out again. You can see that our welt pocket is almost done. We just need to tack down this welt piece here. So we're going to stitch through all layers along those little edges of the welt pocket to keep it pointing up. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that in place. You might want to go ahead and steam or press everything just to make sure, once again, that like everything is pointing in the right direction. And then we'll go over to our sewing machine. Make sure that you increase your stitch length back up to 2.5 millimeters, and then we are going to just edge stitch once again along those lines. You might want to check again, just making sure that your pocket is laying flat so that you're not accidentally, catching your pocket in case it got folded up when you laid it down at your sewing machine. Okay, and this is what your welt pocket should look like now that it is done. Now we of course did this for the right pocket, but you're going to do all of these steps once again for the left pocket as well. Here are my two pockets done. We are done for today. Come back tomorrow where we will do some main assembly as well as the pocket assembly for view B.